An employee of the city's first legal marijuana dispensary is being held on Rikers Island on cannabis-related felony charge in a striking example of how pot, despite being legal in New York State, can still drag people into the criminal justice system as it remains illegal under federal law and those of several states. When police pulled over 33-year-old Jumal George in Brooklyn on October 11th, he was driving to a friend's house after a shift as a lead budtender at the Housing Works Cannabis Company. They found he was driving without a license and that he had a warrant against him in Pennsylvania. The charges there stem from several cannabis-related charges he was arrested for back in 2021. His fiancée, Audra Ramos, told the city that he had left his license at home. A little mistake was made, but he was fixing it, she said, noting that George had made trips back to Pennsylvania to deal with the charges there, but missed a hearing after one of the dates was moved up suddenly last year. That's when the warrant was issued. When police pulled him over in New York, George was detained. 2 days later, he was sentenced to 7 days at Rikers for the license charge. But more than a week later, George is still being held there, awaiting extradition to Pennsylvania, where he's facing a felony charge for possession with intent to distribute marijuana, along with 6 misdemeanor charges, including a DUI for a Schedule I drug. With no bail set yet in that case, which could carry up to 15 years in prison time, Mike Haskell, a former colleague at the Housing Works Cannabis Company, who left recently to run his own consulting firm, has put together a GoFundMe to raise money for George's legal fees and prospective bail. That's raised more than $10,000 as of Monday evening, with Haskell's telling the city that the cannabis community has really stepped up to support Jumal, and it makes me proud to be a part of it, he says. The district attorney's office in York County, Pennsylvania, said it did not comment on active cases, and phone calls on Monday to the public defender representing George in Pennsylvania were not returned, nor was a phone call to his public defender at Legal Aid in New York City. In a quote, "No more arrests, no more convictions, no more incarcerations," cannabis lawyer Jeffrey Hoffman, who is not involved in George's case, wrote in an email to the city about the detention, calling it madness. A longtime cannabis user, George became interested in becoming part of New York's new legal market after legalization passed in March of 2021. And previously a budtender, George attended a 4-week training in retail cannabis work by the nonprofit Hospitality Pathways last year. In a quote, Jumal had always made it clear that he intended to work in the legal cannabis market, and he took the steps to do that, said his former colleague Haskell. And he said for years he's run a small edibles business with his fiancée. The two have a child together and also volunteer to make birthday cakes for people who cannot afford them. Ramos was featured as a New York of the Week by NY1 News last December for their volunteer work, and George was one of the first people through the program to get a job in the legal marketplace, said Beatrice Stein, who runs the nonprofit. In a quote, she says, "We are heartbroken, and we're just doing everything we can to try to help him," she said. While at Housing Works, George became a regular at industry events after seeing himself in the knowledge of various cannabis strains and types of products, his colleague said. And in a quote, "He's just pivotal to their operation over at Housing Works," said Colin Decker, the owner of the cannabis brand 7Cs, which sells its products to Housing Works. Decker spread the word about George's detention on his Instagram page after learning about it this weekend. And in a quote, he says, "You can't expect like these other states to be where we are in New York. But regardless of that, it is still ridiculous how it's affecting someone's life," he said. Before starting his pathway in legal weed, George was arrested near York, Pennsylvania in August of 2021, and after a traffic stop for making a turn from the wrong lane. According to records and interviews, George and his fiancée, Ramos, were on a trip with their child to visit the amusement park, Hershey Park, a few hours away. Cops said they smelled cannabis in the car, and Ramos recalled when police searched the vehicle, they found packages of edibles that she says they had forgotten about. George was charged with possession as well as driving under the influence of a Schedule I drug based on a blood test. And because cannabis can stay in the bloodstream for days, a positive blood test isn't necessarily indicative of impaired driving the way a failed breathalyzer is indicative of drunk driving. Something states, including those that have legalized marijuana, have struggled to address. George made it to the first hearing in that case, but the date of his second hearing was changed, and the notice was sent to his address where he no longer lived. According to interviews with friends and family, he hadn't been hired at Housing Works yet and was having car problems last November when the warrant was first issued, said Ramos. After George's nearly 2 weeks in Rikers, Ramos said she is taking him less. She's talking to him less and less. He's getting maced every day in there, she said, starting to cry. And in a final quote, she says, I started telling him not to call me, Ramos said, adding that she can often hear people arguing while she's on the phone with him, and I don't want him arguing. I just want him out of jail, she says. A very, very heartbreaking story on this Tuesday, but I want to hear what y'all have to say about this. And this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News Hour. What do y'all think?
It's sad, man.
This is so sad. This is so sad. And the thing is, driving without a license, it's not that his license was revoked. It's not that his license was suspended. He just didn't physically have it on him. The police can look up and tell whether or not you actually have a license. The man left it at home. And I know the warrant came up when they ran his name, but this is just, I mean, come on.
I think basically what happened is he got pulled over. He didn't have a license, and then in the process of them running his name and whatnot, the warrant popped up, and then it had a hold basically to where he was extraditable. And to my recollection, I know at least in California, they can keep you up to like 12 business days, maybe even 14 business days, while waiting for an extradition to come pick you up to bring you to another state.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know. I know the story didn't. The story didn't clarify like how much that they found on him
Mm-hmm.
or anything. They said they forgot that edibles were found in the car, but the cops claimed that they smelled marijuana in the car.
Hey,
And
in all fairness,
that gave them ground.
I have had edibles that do smell like weed really bad. I have
Well, they have their
experienced
own
that.
edibles business, so that it wasn't like it was like legal. Like I think they have their own edibles business. It mentions that in the article, so it was probably some edibles that they make, and those
Yep,
homemade edibles really do smell like weed.
exactly.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just sad all around, and they gave him intent to sell
Mm-hmm.
as well. So they gave him
Yeah.
like interstate trafficking
Yeah.
Hey, look,
on that
let's
because he's
break
from
this
New York.
down. Let's break this down into a couple buckets. Let's break this down into a couple buckets, right? Like there's a policy bucket, there's a human story, like the vignette bucket. There's like and then there's what does this represent? Because there's a lot of people who are attempting to
Doesn't this
carve
fall
out a
under
place.
Joe Biden's pardoning of simple possession?
No, this
But
has
no,
nothing to
No,
do with it.
because
Nope.
they ramped it up.
No,
But
There's a
intent to sell,
why are
right?
you
federal.
bucking it out, bro? That's the fifth bucket. That's the chuck it bucket.
That has
No, so
nothing to
like
do with this. There's no jurisdiction
No.
on that.
so the
No.
first
And
the first
the
bucket is
only thing he would have control over is interstate commerce, and interstate commerce, he only pardoned simple possession. So
Mhm.
so never mind that. So first bucket is policy, right? And so like we've talked a lot, and we've had like the the shut the fuck up attorneys on High at 9 News, and the first bucket is like this idea that like the smell of cannabis isn't supposed to be probable cause for searching
Right.
someone's car anymore
Mhm.
in states that have either a medical or adult use program. And so that's the first thing that comes up for me is like, is that really
Well,
probable cause?
Pennsylvania doesn't have that. Pennsylvania does not have that law in place. You can be searched with probable cause if the aroma of cannabis is in the car in Pennsylvania. So don't
Pennsylvania does have a medical program, right? And
they do have a medical program, but it's very, very, very tight. And I'm not even sure if they even allow for actual flower.
right, because who would need flower? Cannabis medical patient, right?
Yeah,
So
but if you work in a cultivation in Pennsylvania, you're gonna smell like flower when you come out of that cultivation, period.
so this would be so in intent to sell, and since he's a New York resident, this would be a federal charge, right? There's
the
nothing
second
No,
that
bucket,
no. This is a state charge, according to Pennsylvania, from my understanding.
then Fetterman should
Now,
let him out. Fetterman should just pardon him and let
Fetterman
him
don't
out.
have the ability to do that. He's a senator, a federal senator. He has
federal
zero
government
power
can't
with law
pardon
enforcement in
state charge.
Pennsylvania. He
Fetterman
could,
should
that-
push
the,
back.
mo- the most he could do is put out a statement saying that he thinks that he should be freed, but that's about it.
So
He
so
should
the second
champion this issue, and he should attack this immediately, because this is right up his lane and this is in his state, and he should be putting pressure on the
So
state
look,
to
I agree with
rectify
you, bro,
this
but
this
think
catastrophe.
about what you're asking, Rico. You're asking someone that can't even dress up to go to work to
you
basically.
talking about Biden?
No.
I've seen him dress
I'm
up,
talking
right?
about Fetterman. I'm talking about Fetterman. The fact that he wears
What do
hoodies
you
and
mean dress up
shorts
to go to work,
and
Jason? What do you mean by that, Jason?
exactly.
It
You
sounds
know
like
exactly
code
what I
language.
meant. I just stated it pretty
Sounds like code language.
obviously.
How do you dress up to go to work?
You see it right here, baby.
Well, we talked about the chaps at the beginning of the show, so you know, Rico, don't play dumb.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get to this second bucket, though, right? The second bucket is this: the war on drugs was not a war on drugs; it was a war on families, a war on communities, and it was a war on the family model. And when you lock up a bunch of people, you create parentless households, right? And so like this, when she talks about not wanting to talk to her man on the phone in Rikers, that's code for he doesn't have enough juice in there to get enough ramen soups to be able to pay to talk to me every day, and I'm just trying to go easy on my man so he can just do his time while he's in there, and he doesn't have to think about all the things he can't control on the outside while he's in a fucking insane asylum for people who mostly deserve to be in mental health institutions and not just institutionalized in Rikers. So like, this is really sad. There's a kid involved. There is a guy who wanted to go from legacy to legal. There's somebody who had a foot in both worlds. There's somebody who had knowledge they could contribute to a newly regulated adult use market, and somebody who was putting the work in to try to be a part of that. And to have all of that come screeching to a crashing halt because a letter was delivered to the wrong address, and whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. Like, the sad thing about this is that this is an everyday situation, and men like him, women like him, parents like him are being separated from their parents, separated from economic opportunity, separated from the slivers of hope that they have that a regulated cannabis industry can provide them the opportunity to leverage their know-how and their who know what to be able to do something here. And this is the way that dreams are broken. One court appearance at a time, one missed court appearance at a time, one handcuffed moment at a time. To be handcuffed on the side of the road, sitting on the curb, and to have your children or a kid see that over what? Over some edibles?
Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
really, 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 this is super, super sad.
It
Yeah,
is.
and Jason,
No, well
Jason, you
said,
said
Darrell. Well said. Yeah.
yeah, and you said about Fetterman. Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania's governor, is supposedly pro cannabis as well. So they should be able to latch
you know
on to
what?
this issue.
There's enough
get
people
this
that
guy
are
home.
there's enough people that are pro cannabis in Pennsylvania's legislature that I definitely do think that they should be doing something. But I am disappointed to that this story didn't touch on any of it, and so I only can assume that they're not doing anything about it.